is a certain type of equally ignorant atheist. Both read the Bible the same way and draw from it conclusions that are actually neither stated in Scripture nor, in fact, the position of either the Catholic or the Protestant churches. Well, we'll explore that further, but
I was going to say, not my problem, but I was rather amazed to have elicited such enthusiasm from people clapping, saying, no, the church has never claimed to be the one true church. I mean, you can clap that if you like, but it doesn't seem to me to be historically true. Anyway, it's nothing to me. I just wanted to know which side of it you took, but you don't seem to have everyone with you.
It's not a matter of taking sides. In Catholicism, there is something called the development of doctrine. So even if you can show it was believed in the 3rd century A.D., it doesn't follow it's the Catholic position.
Well, people used to lose their lives on these propositions, so let's not be frivolous about them. Then, if you want me to be ecumenical, I'll be ecumenical then. Do you think that it is better to be, and more likely to lead to your salvation, to be a Christian than another kind of monotheist?
Of course I believe that.
Can I ask you on what grounds that your superior claim rests? That it makes you better than a Muslim or a Jew?
Certainly. Give me a minute to lay it out.
And
I'm going to tie my hand behind the back by doing it in purely secular terms. Let me start with a proposition I think no one in this room would disagree with. Things in the world are not what they ought to be. Anyone disagree with that? No. That means we live on 2 levels, don't we? We live on this is the level of the way things are. Let's call it the human level. But we all know that there is a second level. That's the way things ought to be. Let's just perfect goodness, perfect beauty, truth, and so on. So you have these 2 levels. Let's call them for a moment the human level and the divine level. Now, all the religions in the world are aimed at trying to ask, how can this chasm between the human level and the divine level be bridged? You ask about Judaism and Islam, so I'll refer to those 2. The Eastern religions have one solution. I'll set it aside for a moment. Judaism and Islam jointly believe, and I say jointly, they believe it in slightly different ways, but the solution is similar, that the way for this chasm to be closed is for human beings to build a certain kind of a ladder from man to God. What is the shape of this ladder? When in Islam, it's the 5 pillars. Pray 5 times a day, observe Ramadan, do charity, go to Mecca. In Judaism, it may be different. Dietary regulations, and so on. But the idea is these are human efforts to ascend to God. Christianity is different, maybe not better, but it certainly is different in declaring this project wonderful and noble, but impossible. That this human effort, however gallant, cannot close this enormous gap. If the gap is to be closed, now maybe as an atheist you say it can't be closed, but if it is to be closed, the Christian belief is it has to be done from the other side. In some mysterious way, God has got to condescend to the human level, and that's the role that Christ plays. He's the emissary, if you will, from God to man. Now, notice that here I haven't appealed to Scripture. I haven't quoted the book of Leviticus or the Gospel of Matthew. I've given, in my own best way, a certain anthropological account of the human problem. I've given the ways in which different solutions are proposed, and I leave it to you to examine which solution is the most plausible. I'm saying the Christian view seems to me to make the most sense. If indeed this great gap can be closed, it seems to me that it has to be closed the Christian way. The other way can make progress, but even though good, it isn't going to be good enough.
Fantastic. So you'd make a really good Muslim, in that the main profession of faith, the only real profession of faith a Muslim has to make is there is one God and his messenger, his emissary, the crosser of the gap, is the Prophet Muhammad. I mean, you have just as perfectly stated that, restated it, as one could have wished. I wish you joy of it.
I'm sorry,
I wish you joy of it.
Well, either I didn't hear you or you have just issued a whopping non sequitur, so I'll give you the benefit of repeating it.
Which is a perfect point.
You said that the gap could only be closed if God sent an emissary. That's what makes Christianity different. I appeal to the audience. Did I misstate that? Did he not say that? Did you not say that?
I did say it, and
yeah.
But
what is the profession of faith of Islam? There is but one God, and Muhammad is his messenger to us. That's all you need to be a Muslim.
Here, if I can briefly answer, then we'll go to questions.
Do you think Islam is man-made or God-made? Do you think that God spoke through us to Muhammad, or that only Muslims are under this wrong impression? That God's only appeared to us once
Here, let me
through
give
the Nazarene.
Here, let me give the Muslim answer, which is that Muhammad was solely a man. That's not my answer. That's the Islamic answer. Islam is different from Christianity. In Islam, Muhammad is in no way considered to be God's special messenger. Muhammad is believed to be the illiterate and unworthy recipient of Allah's revelation. He does in no way occupies the same position in Islam as Christ does in Christianity. So the equivalence that you're suggesting between Christ and Muhammad is simply wrong.
It's crossing the gap in the same direction, though, isn't it? Surely. You said the gap had to be crossed not by humans building up towards heaven, but heaven coming down towards us. Well, quite plainly, the Quran is the same in that respect. I'm asking you a different question now. I'm saying, do you think that those who believe that God ventriloquized himself through the Archangel Gabriel, oddly enough, through this illiterate, that's a true statement, that did happen, might have happened, could have happened, or didn't happen?
I don't believe it did happen, but the point I'm trying to make
Gives
that
us
you're
something in
missing.
common.
Obviously, I don't accept the revelations of other religions, but the point I'm trying to make here is that the Islamic solution is radically different from the Christian one. Whatever Allah's revelation to Muhammad, it was not vicarious atonement. It was not the idea
direction.
that God is closing the gap. It was rather that human beings have these social and legal and civic duties. In other words, in Christianity, you have the idea, for example, that morality is intentional. If you've contemplated the sin, Christ says, in a sense, you've committed it. In Islam, it's very different.
Thought crime.
One second, the mullah
Thought
doesn't...
crime. Totalitarianism again. Thought crime.
Whether it is or not...
We know what you're thinking, and we can punish you for it. Totalitarianism defined. Tyranny defined. Thought crime. You said it for me.
It might be a thought crime. Christ says nothing about punishing one's thoughts. Christ basically is simply defining the nature of sin. Our legal system is based on the idea that offenses rely in part on the intention. That's why a first-degree murder is different from a crime of passion, for example. That's another example of the way that Christianity has shaped our legal culture.
No one comes to the Father except by me. That's not judging you on what you think.
But it's one thing to say. It's one thing to say that Christ is the means by which people get to heaven. And it's quite another thing to say that everyone who hasn't explicitly accepted Christ is damned. In fact, the Bible itself disputes that. In the book of Luke, we know that Abraham is said to be in heaven. Well, Abraham lived before Christ. He obviously didn't accept Christ, and yet he's in heaven. So the Bible itself confutes your assertion that a positive affirmation of Christ is a prerequisite for salvation.
No. The Bible is incoherent. That's a quite different statement.
Well, you're just choosing the parts
The
that
Bible
you
is,
can...
the Bible is thoroughgoingly through and through incoherent. That doesn't make me inconsistent.
Not inconsistent, only selective.
Gentlemen, on that note, I'm feeling a little like Gwen Eiffel here, you know. But why don't we do this? A round of applause for both gentlemen, and we'll go to questions from the audience. Fantastic. As I mentioned earlier, both gentlemen have given up some of their time, so we'd have more time for questions. We'd ask the questioners to be as focused, precise as you possibly can, and put it in the form of a question, please. Sir? Very nice. Deferring, sir?
Thank you, gentlemen, both for your wonderful remarks tonight. My question may be an entirely whole new debate. I'd like to hear both of you respond, but in particular, Mr. Hitchens, I address this question to you if I can't get response from both. Mr. Hitchens, how would you define or delimit what we mean by a person, and what is our innate duty to another person?
Well, I think the word individual is a well-chosen word for our description. In other words, you can't boil it down any further. However much you talk about the society, the tribe, the species, and so forth, you're stuck with the fact that it has to be made up of members who are a bit more than atoms. So individual is a person, someone who can't be further subdivided. Hope that will meet your rather bizarre question, I have to say. The second is, how do we know what our duties to one another are? Well, what we know is that